Crude oil had a very interesting week. Despite this huge build, we're going to end the week still above $46.50 at the high end of where it's been trading these last 5 days. What do you make of that?
Hey, Oliver, great to be back with you. Yeah, I think we had a surprising crude build. I think it was a lot of noise in the market. There was some poor weather in the Houston shipping channel, and that impeded the ability to have crude exports. So we just built way more than the market estimated. I think what I make of the recent rally is crude oil was the most severely punished in the wake of the COVID lockdowns as people stopped traveling, and now that there is a real case for optimism with the recent vaccine news, people are just getting excited and closing out their short positions. And at the very least, I think that they're getting less negative. And I think you're starting to see also a little bit more bullishness, not necessarily about the remainder of 2020 or even early 2021, but in the latter half of 2021 into 2022, where travel and normal life can resume, and that should be really bullish for oil demand.
Tamar, the travel data has been very resilient, shockingly so, but as Nicole and I just mentioned, it finally kind of got hit this week. What is the timing of how these builds for EIA might correspond with that? Now that we saw TSA finally report some pretty bad numbers, worst since July, should we expect that to already be showing up in some of the supply dynamics, or is that something that might show up next week?
Yeah, I think we'd expect to see the outlook for jet fuel to remain bearish until the vaccine is in wide dissemination. I think that travel will really remain on pause from a jet fuel perspective, but I think people are going to start driving more and more. I think, the winter might be a difficult period of time. In general, seasonally, this is a tough time of year for the crude oil market. But as you head into the springtime, even if the vaccine at that point isn't widely disseminated and air travel is curtailed, I think people will be driving a lot more. So you just change where on the demand curve you're going for crude oil, but I don't think that demand for crude oil will be disappearing. It just might go to the lighter end of the barrel, which is to produce gasoline rather than the heavier side for jet fuel.
Okay. So obviously that's part of the equation that is not working for crude. One of the things in your notes that I think is a little bit more bigger picture, but as we head into 2021 is also noteworthy, I don't hear a lot of talk about for oil, is the divided government potential, depending on what happens in Georgia, but the idea that big sweeping changes to policy won't be able to hit some of the oil companies. I guess it might depend on how much support there is for green energy, but what do you see in terms of policy impact, and is that an overhang to the market or a tailwind right now? Do we know which side this falls on?
Great question. Yeah, obviously we'll have to find out about Georgia, but I think even irrespective of that, we've seen that the courts, the judiciary system has gotten increasingly conservative. And so even if the Senate does go Democratic, I think that a lot of the legislative proposals might get hamstrung in the court. So we'll have to see just how sweeping of a reforms could be passed. I think, look, regulatory costs are probably going to go up for the industry. I don't know if that's really the industry's biggest problem. It's sort of like the tail wagging the dog. I don't think that it's going to be any more difficult for the industry than it was under the Obama administration. And under the Obama administration, we didn't see wells not get drilled because of regulatory costs. We saw wells not get drilled because the returns weren't there and commodity prices weren't high enough to support it. And I think increasingly what we are seeing is companies, at least in the public equity sector, become more and more shareholder and returns focused. So I think that that's going to be the main driver. It doesn't, I've talked to industry experts since the election results, and they have said that the increased cost from a regulatory perspective is not really much of a determinant. We do think that there will be more of a of a push over time for lower carbon fuels, but that doesn't mean that demand for crude oil is really going to go away anytime soon, just because of how inherent it is in so much of our everyday life, from transportation to heating to clothing and fabric and petrochemicals, beyond which I think most people don't even really pay attention to on a regular basis.
So Tamar, in conclusion, if there's not a big kind of existential risk to crude at this point from a policy standpoint, if it doesn't look like OPEC Plus is going to flood the market in any way, that seems to be put behind us over the last 2 weeks. The move in crude oil, as we look now to kind of regain where we were, what should people think about? I mean, is pre-COVID level in crude a reasonable expectation, or did anything change and broke along the way that can't be repaired?
Yeah, so I think that things will be spotty between now and whenever that vaccine is widely disseminated and we have confidence restored. So that might take until 2022. 2020, I think, is a goner. I think seasonally it's just going to be tough, at least through Q1 of next year. And then 2021 is even overall, I would say, uncertain. The market doesn't really look constructive to us until 2022, but at that point it does look, frankly, quite constructive because of the curtailed investment in supply and because so much of the demand for oil, we think, will return. China and India are not going to stop growing. The population dynamics support ongoing growth there. That's a fact. That those are facts on the ground that you can't dispute. And it will take a while to have this full energy transition. And so if you start to see prices, gearing up at the pump, I don't know how much people are going to focus on the environmental aspect. But I do think that there is an opportunity for more of a bullish picture in the future. I just don't think we're quite there yet. Although I think, at this point, equities might start to be pricing that in.
Okay.